KC Joyner, the football scientist, one thought on every game. Get his perspective on as well on the Eagles versus the Cowboys. And as all guests, he joins us on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. Casey, how you doing this Thursday?
Oh, doing great. How are you guys?
Doing pretty good. And listen, when you look at this game coming up for the Eagles, they're still mathematically in it, which is amazing in and of itself. But the other thing is that it seemed like despite all the injuries, the 13th different offensive line, guys who worked at a tire store and playing in the secondary, this Eagles team still found a way to be competitive, and it feels like a lot of that is because of this rookie quarterback.
It does. Hurts is allowing the offense to do so many things that they just weren't able to do under Wentz. I mean, the trend today obviously is that you've got quarterbacks who can hit you in the rushing game and in the passing game. He can do that, but he's added the verticality into the game. I believe he had 5 vertical completions last week, which is a big plus for this offense, and he was able to get it to more receivers. He's able to not just hit one target. He's able to spread the ball around on vertical passes and that sort of thing. I mean, when you can do those things, when you can run the ball like he has and you get the vertical passes, it just gives this offense a different type of complexion that it had a couple weeks ago.
You mentioned the verticality and things he can do. Is it that he is a better at doing those things than Wentz, or is it that he's in a better mental framework right now than Wentz?
I think he's in a better mental framework, but he's also the quarterback who can work better behind the shaky offensive line. He's comfortable if he doesn't have a shaky offensive line. I've been saying about Wentz all year that one of the big things for him is that he has to have a certain level of stability around him, in my estimation, to be able to be to reach his top level of productivity. Whereas Hurts, you can give him less stability, and he's able to work around that. So I think that's a big factor. I also think, though, that because you've got the things that Hurts can do, it allows Peterson to be able to go into the playbook and to do different things in the playbook than he would otherwise. There are a few things I think Hurts can do in the vertical game just because you can get the defense to bite up on his rushing ability. I think that opens up some doors in the passing game. So I think it's a combination of factors.
That ties perfectly in the question I want to bring up next is, what have you seen out of Jalen Reagor since making the quarterback switch? I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with what you were saying with Dougie P and the playbook.
Yeah, and I think that also, let's put it this way. If you're Wentz, if you're taking chances at any point in the game, and mind you, he took plenty of really bad chances, but if you're taking chances, hey, I don't have any. They're not going to cut me any slack. People are expecting me to fail, and he would still take those chances, but that he was a little hesitant to do so. I think Hurts he's more willing to maybe to take some chances and put some balls into areas that I think he's more capable of doing so at this point. But he's also more willing to do so because he knows, hey, if I make a mistake, okay, look, I can make these other big plays, and I don't have this track record of a bunch of games where I've been making errors. So it allows him to be able to do that, and I think it allows Peterson to open up the playbook and throw more passes to a guy like Reagor to go for vertical passes in a way that he couldn't before because he knows, hey, if one mistake happens, well, we got a new quarterback, then it comes some slack.
KC Joyner joining us here on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at KC Joyner TFS for your NFL and fantasy football news and information. KC, this week they got the Cowboys for the second time. No Ben DiNucci this time. It's Andy Dalton out there. But one thing interesting with the Cowboys is they have won 2 straight. The blowout win over the Burrow-less Bengals, and then a tough win last week without Ezekiel Elliott against the 49ers. So what are the Cowboys bringing into this game that the Eagles didn't see the first time round?
One thing is they've got a much more dangerous offense. The Cowboys have racked up 30 or more points in 3 of the past 5 games, and also their defense is playing a lot better because they have 7 takeaways over the past 2 weeks. I think that's one of they were able to get takeaways last week because San Francisco just tends to make a lot of those risky plays. They're one of the worst turnover-laden teams in the league, so that's part of it. But I think they realize, Dallas does, that the issues they have on defense are they don't have the type of power rushing game that they had a few years ago where they can control the game that way. They know that they've got to get into high-scoring games. They know that that's just going to be the way things are with them. So I think it's causing them to be more aggressive in the passing game. I think it's going to afford the Eagles some opportunities to make some interceptions.
Now, you mentioned interceptions, Casey, but we know that Darius Slay is coming back. Do you have confidence in the rest of that secondary to hold up against Cooper, Gallup, And Lamb, considering the fact you just mentioned they're a high-powered offense, they're going against Michael Jacquet.
Yeah, I'm thinking that, and if you see more, and Roby Coleman has been playing particularly well. Even Slay, I've got him. I use my color-coded rankings for defensive players. Red is great from a defensive perspective. Yellow is okay, and green is bad. And Slay had been red for a long time, but I've dropped him down to yellow because he's just too inconsistent. I mean, the matchup would say that he might line up against Gallup. They may end up saying, okay, we're going to have him follow Cooper, which they probably should do, because if you're putting Jacquet or you're putting Seymour or anybody else on Cooper, you're just asking for problems. But I think all of these things are leaning toward. In fact, I also, by the way, downgraded the Eagles' safeties now. Mills and Epps, I've got the list in the lineup, and they both listed as green right now. So I think that if you're the Eagles, you've got to expect that Dallas might put up 30 points in this game as well. And if they do, you better be expected to go out there and try to put up 35. So I think it's going to be called for an aggressive game plan.
How do you think that Doug Peterson can best utilize Miles Sanders on Sunday?
Hand him the ball as often as possible. Give him 30 carries. Dallas, over the past 5 games, they've allowed 120 or more rushing yards to running backs alone. This is not counting quarterbacks. Running backs alone, they've allowed 120 or more rushing yards in 4 out of 5 games, and they've allowed 6 rushing touchdowns to running backs in that time span. And mind you, they were even worse earlier in the year. This is a defense that gets out of position on defense. They don't hold their gaps well. They don't have They don't hold the gap responsibilities well. You can also move them out of you can move them. They don't have a stout enough defense. I mean, if I'm looking at the Eagles, I'm going, I want to do all types of running plays. I'd love to be able to see them do more than just zones, though. I don't want to see just the outside, the inside, and middle zones. Really like to see some trap plays. Really like to see some power rushing plays, too, because I think the combination of those factors could get them that. But they don't need to just give it to Sanders either. I think if they want to run the ball 30 times, they better be incorporating Boston Scott, who's got some of the best vision in the league.
Casey, this year, the Eagles' defense, they've been top 5 in sacks, top 5 in quarterback hits, top 5 in quarterback hurries, and they're doing it with basically just a defensive front. A lot of people in this area, they criticize Jim Schwartz a lot, and even though they had a lot of yards yanked up against it, let's be realistic. If it wasn't for a handful of 4 fabulous catches, 2 by Hopkins, 1 by Fitzgerald, and 1 by Arnold, they probably don't score as many points. So what is your perspective on this Eagles team and the job they've done the last few weeks?
If you can get the pass rush with 4, there's no need to keep bringing blitzes and things. You can go ahead and do that. That's what they ought to be doing. And frankly, I think they'll be able to get that kind of a pass rush. I mean, the Cowboys are going. If they're going to be aggressive, you're going to go vertical. If you're going to go vertical, you got to block for 3 seconds, and you're going to afford the Eagles some opportunities. I think the Eagles need to be sitting back, though. I think the Eagles need to try to. You don't want to just give up the big play. I know it's an old cliche thing, but you got to make these guys dink and dunk their way down the field, and they've got the people to do that because really, I mean, Gallup has been a vertical receiver in past years, but he hasn't been that impactful of late. I think Lamb is hitting the rookie wall a bit, so he's not going to be as impactful. So if I'm the Eagles, I'm saying, okay, I might be doing the old Bill Belichick cover 1, double Cooper, and they just have that simple defensive scheme and say, hey, this is what we're going to do, because I just don't think that they have too much to worry about from the other Dallas players. Having said that, though, when you've got that many green-rated players in your secondary, you're going to give up big plays, and it's a tough thing for the Eagles because I think they don't have the horses in their secondary to be more aggressive.
KC Joyner, one thought on every game here on 97.3 ESPN. Let's get to all the schedule. We got Friday, Saturday, Sunday games to hit on with Casey right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Casey, tomorrow folks can hear Vikings Saints right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Will Drew Brees be better in his second start than the rough 3 quarters he had in the first one back?
I think he could be, but the problem for the Saints is that on defense, they've given up 425 rushing yards over the past 2 weeks, and they rushed for fewer than 100 rushing yards in back-to-back games for the first time this season. So it's their ground game that's causing as much of a problem as anything. The Vikings have racked up 145 more rushing yards per game for 3 straight contests, scored 27 or more in 4 of the past 5. So I'm actually picking the Vikings tomorrow.
Looking at Saturday, a triple header. The first game on the slate starting at 12:30 here on 97.3 ESPN. Bucks versus Detroit. Can the Bucks get to a 4 quarters game? It feels like they keep starting out slow, Casey.
They do, and they can't keep affording to do that. But thing is, the Bucks offense last week, it posted its 3rd highest passing yardage total of the season. The Bucks defense allowed its 2nd lowest rushing yardage total. I think the Bucs are getting back to their early season success formula. The Lions, they won't even have their head coach there on the field, but he's been getting the most of it. You can't have a talent club, but the Lions have allowed 148 points over the past 4 games, so I just don't think they get a chance in this one.
49ers versus Cardinals. It seems like the 49ers are one of the most injured teams in all of football, but they still keep finding ways to compete. And the Cardinals, they need to keep winning to make sure they have a spot in the playoffs, Casey.
They do, and their offense has stepped up after going through a slump for about 5 weeks there. The past 2 contests, 262 rushing yards, 654 passing yards, 48 first downs, 59 points. Their defense has tallied 2 or more takeaways in 5 of the past 9 weeks. In San Francisco, 16 giveaways in the past 5 weeks and 2 or more giveaways in every game since week 4. They're so error-prone on picking the Cardinals.
Miami Dolphins versus the Vegas Raiders. This Dolphins team was a big favorite for a while, but they've lost 3 of their last 4. Can they get a win versus the Raiders?
Yeah, the Raiders, they were at 6-3 at one point. You figured they were going to be a legit playoff contender, but their defense has fallen apart. Over the past 4 games, they've allowed 36 points per game, and they've allowed 400 or more offensive yards on 8 occasions this year. Miami has given up fewer than 200 net passing yards for the past 6 contests, getting a lot of takeaways, too, and Las Vegas has 11 giveaways in the past 4 weeks. I'm picking Miami.
Sunday slate starting with the Falcons versus the Chiefs. It feels like this Chiefs team is just destined to run to the Super Bowl. Does Atlanta have any fight in this game?
The Chiefs have some problems in their secondary. I don't think they're quite as strong in their secondary as in their pass rush has been quite. In fact, their defense, I think, is not quite an Achilles heel, but teams can get into shootouts with them. The problem is Atlanta's tallied 17 or fewer points in 3 of the past 5 games. They're just not slated. They don't have the kind of powerhouse offense to get into that type of shootout, even with the talent that they have. So I'll take Kansas City.
Jets coming off their first win of the season. They got Cleveland. Cleveland, they actually mathematically can still win the AFC North.
I think they actually probably will, because I think we'll talk about it in a minute, but Pittsburgh got its hands full this week, and then if Cleveland wins this game and Pittsburgh loses, then Cleveland and Pittsburgh will be for the AFC North title on Week 17. The Jets, by the way, now, after what they did last week, they scored 23 or more points in 4 of the past 6 games. So, they can put up some points, but Cleveland's offense is playing so well, and last week they showed what they can do in certain games. They can get shut down defense, too, so I'll take the Browns.
You mentioned the Steelers. Steelers taking on the Colts. This Colts defense is really good. And Pittsburgh, it felt like on Monday night, the only guy who cared to win was Minkah Fitzpatrick. Yeah,
and maybe Benny Snell. The Steelers look like an unmotivated team, which is amazing. They have no verticality whatsoever. Ben Roethlisberger's arm is shot. They tallied fewer than 100 rushing yards in 8 of the past 9 games. They've given the ball away 9 times in the past 5 games. They've racked up 0 takeaways in 2 of the last 3 matchups. Key, though, if they can get turnovers. The Colts are 8-1 this year when they post 0 or 1 giveaways on offense. So if the Steelers can get 2, they get a chance. I don't think they'll get 2, so I'm picking the Colts.
Bears versus the Jags. The Bears, after their win last week, have put themselves in a position to still make the playoffs, or will the Jags steal their thunder?
The Bears have rushed for 629 yards over the past 4 games, 368 yards over the past 2 weeks. Their ground game is doing fantastic. Problem for them is that their defense has really taken a big step back. They've allowed 27 or more points and nearly 400 yards in 3 of the past 4 contests. Problem with Jacksonville, though, last 4 games they've given up 1,742 yards, and they've allowed fewer than 27 points twice all season. Their defense is that bad. I'll take Chicago.
Giants are going into a game with more injuries, taking on the Ravens. The Ravens look like a hot team right now, and the Giants look like a band of misfit toys.
Yeah, they do. It looked like the Ravens were going to be out of playoff contention when they lost to Pittsburgh in that Wednesday afternoon game, Week 12, but they've run off 3 straight wins. They rushed for 684 yards and racked up 121 points in that span. The Giants, they tied 13 points for the past 2 weeks. They haven't posted 20 more points since Week 10. Daniel Jones is hurt. Just so many elements going against them. I'm definitely taking Baltimore.
Ryan Finley and the Cincinnati Bengals are going to Houston to take on Deshaun Watson and the Texans. Why should we care?
Yeah, exactly. What a scintillating game. We care. Maybe the Bengals will show up again like they did last week. They were saying, if I understand correctly, they are not saying who the starting quarterback is going to be. It might be Brandon Allen. It might be Finley. Which is like, okay, really? You think you're going to throw people off with that? But the Texans, they've been outscored 89-47 since that Thanksgiving Day win over Detroit. So that says that they've got problems. But the Bengals have scored a single-digit point total in 3 of the past 4. Houston scored 20 or more in 4 of the past 5, so I just think they've got more firepower. I'll take Houston.
KC Joyner, the football scientist, one thought on every game for NFL Week 16. Let's hit the 4 o'clock slate of games. The Broncos take on the Chargers. An interesting interdivisional matchup between two young quarterbacks.
Yeah, definitely. It looked like, when the Chargers lost to New England a few weeks ago, 45-0, you kind of figured, okay, they're just going to fall apart for the rest of the year. But they've won 2 straight games, and frankly, it's the best 2 wins they've had all year. Denver started off 3-4, but they've got a Swiss cheese rush defense, allowed 670 rushing yards in the past month. So even though they've won 3 straight against the Chargers, I think the Chargers are better suited to take this one.
The Washington football team has Dwayne Haskins starting at quarterback despite everything that's happened this week because of the calf injury with Alex Smith. So can Washington beat Ron Rivera's former team, the Panthers?
I think it's going to be very tough because, last week they played well in defense, held Russell Wilson and company to 121 net passing yards, but they allowed 4 sacks and had their first game of 2 turnovers since Week 9. So I think they're going to have that same problem with Haskins under center. Carolina's lost 8 of its last 9 games, but 4 of those defeats are by 5 or fewer points. I think it's going to be a really close game. I'm picking Washington barely because of home field advantage. Won't surprise me for a second, though, if Carolina takes this one.
Rams coming off of the embarrassing loss to the Jets, and now they got their divisional rival, Seattle. Could this game determine who wins the NFC West?
It could. If Seattle wins it, they win the NFC West, and the Rams get a playoff berth if they win. Seattle, they were letting Russell Wilson cook early in the year, and now of late they decided, okay, we want to go back to that power-centric running game and then just go vertical as a counterpunch. Los Angeles has seen a decline in its passing productivity. They posted fewer than 200 net passing yards in 3 of their past 4. Only got 189 yards in last week's epically embarrassing loss to the Jets. But the thing is, Seattle is intending to scale their passing game back, and the Rams are just not consistent. They don't want to be that team. So I'll take Seattle because they're just playing the kind of ball they want to play.
Sunday Night Football here on 97.3 ESPN. Titans versus Packers. I think Aaron Rodgers should be the MVP this year, but this Packers defense, can they actually do anything to slow down the freight train known as Derrick Henry?
I agree with you that Rodgers should be the MVP, and a lot of it is, it's Rodgers versus Tannehill because Tannehill's getting he's getting a little push for, I don't know, if MVP, he's not going to win that. But, he's playing of late. He's getting some consideration. But the point is this is a matchup of heavyweight rushing attacks. Green Bay's posted 646 rushing yards in the past 4 weeks, but Tennessee's got 444 yards on the ground in the past 2 games alone, 150 more rushing yards in 5 of the past 6 contests. I just think that Green Bay's defense is less suited to stop Derrick Henry than the Titans are to stop Aaron Jones. And I think it's going to be the key to this contest, who can stop the other team's running game. So I'll take Tennessee by a small margin.
And, of course, Eagles versus Cowboys. Folks, you hear the coverage start at 3 o'clock here Sunday on 97.3 ESPN. Casey, your keys to the game and your pick for Eagles-Cowboys.
The Eagles, with Hurts under center, they posted back-to-back games with 400 or more offensive yards for only the first time this season. They tallied 24 or more points in consecutive contests for the first time since Week 6. He's also fired up the defense, as the Eagles have posted 5 takeaways in that span. I mentioned that the Cowboys have got their offense going, but they're turnover-laden too, so I think it's a high-scoring, turnover-filled contest. But Hurts gives the Eagles enough of a big play edge that I'll take the Eagles in this one because of him.
There you heard it. KC Joyner calls. He thinks the Eagles are going to beat the Cowboys, which means the Eagles can still mathematically be alive for the NFC East. Who would have thought how crazy this year has been? Make sure you give Casey a follow at KC Joyner TFS for all your NFL and fantasy football analysis. I know people are still in their semifinals and championships this weekend. As all guests, Casey appeared on the Boardwalk on the Hotline. Casey, thanks so much for coming on Thursday, and Merry Christmas, my friend.
Hey, Merry Christmas. You guys too. Appreciate it.